Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad that you're here. My name's Erica. I'm the Senior Communications Director for the American Society of Travel Advisors. And typically when we do media updates, we do them behind the scenes, but lately we've been making our updates more public. We've been inviting our members and our industry colleagues to join us. So that's why we're here. We're bringing this conversation front and center for our travel community, but also for our media guests. And today we have leaders from across the industry, global leaders. We have Zane Kirby, the president and CEO of ASTA. We have Wendy Paradis, from the Association of Canadian Travel Agencies. She's the president. We have Graham Buck from the Association of British Travel Agents. We have Eric Dressan from the European Travel Agents and Tour Operators Association. And we have Vanessa Ledesma from the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. And we're really glad to have them there. So as we get started, I know some of us are still waking up, depending on where you are in the world, but what I would love for you to do is to drop a comment and let us know where you're listening in from. Let us know what association you're a member of. Let us know what ASTA chapter you're a member of. And for our media guests, first of all, thank you for submitting your questions in advance. We are going to try our best to pull all of your questions from the comments thread. However, please also feel free to email your questions to pr@asta.org. If we don't get to your question today, we will follow up. So pr@asta.org is the best place to email us follow-up questions, and we'll be doing some follow-up after this briefing today. If you are a member of the media and you're asking a question on the comment thread, just type media in all caps or identify yourself and your outlet, so that way our team behind the scenes can pull your question and bring them forward during the Q&A. So we will be conducting follow-up. As I said, this will be recorded and available for you and everybody to view at a later time right here on ASTA's Facebook page. And without further ado, I'd like to start by bringing up our panelists. So let's start with Zane Kirby and Wendy Paradis, Graham Buck, Eric Dressan, and Vanessa. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being with us. And let's go ahead and get started. Zane, take it away.
Well, thanks, Erica, and I'm really grateful to be here with this esteemed group of panelists. It's been ASTA's job for the last 18 months to represent our members' interests at all level of government. And over the past 18 months, that job has primarily been to ask for government relief because government action and inaction caused enormous harm to our industry and to the traveling public. That work continues today. We are pushing hard now. We have several grassroots activities on the docket right now where we're trying hard to push back on the ERTC that has been stripped out of the infrastructure bill and get that put back in. We're also looking for industry-specific relief in the SAVE Act. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But also, if that's job one, then job 1A is to promote a safe return, a resumption of international travel. And without that safe resumption, it's going to prolong any kind of recovery that our industry is going to have. So the situation today that we find ourselves is unwieldy and untenable. There's a patchwork of constantly changing rules and regulations that depress demand, confuse the traveling public, and also sometimes even strand travelers. So today, we've again called on our colleagues from the U.S.'s major markets in the Caribbean, the UK, Europe, and Canada to talk about how these rules and regulations impact travel and what we can do as industry associations to add our voice, to ask for more transparency from our governments, to make sure that that we understand the rules that and the conditions that they're placing on travelers so that they can be more clear, because the opacity that we're dealing with right now is, again, it's untenable. There are 175 million citizens in the United States who have been vaccinated. Right now around the world, they're being treated as though they're unvaccinated, and that they pose the same risk to those that are as travelers to foreign lands as those who are unvaccinated. We just think that needs a change. We think that the threat level from our government needs to come up to where the science is, which is that the vaccines are safe, that you're far less likely to get or spread the virus, and far less likely to put any kind of have any kind of hospitalization based on based on whether or not you get even if you get the COVID virus. So that's why we're here today. We need more opacity from our governments. We need a clear message from each of us, and we need to link arms here so that when we can actually speed the recovery of travel. With that, I'll turn it back to Erica.
Thanks, Zane. Thank you so much for that. So our next guest is Wendy from our Canadian friends across the border. Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
Take it away.
Great. So in Canada, like many countries around the world, or all countries around the world, COVID-19 has had a catastrophic impact on our industry. Up until August of this year, Canada has had some of the tightest travel restrictions in the world, including a mandatory hotel quarantine up until this August. So right now across Canada, travel agency revenue remains 90% down compared to 2019. More than 65% of full-time travel agents are currently furloughed. Now, bookings have picked up for the winter 2022, but we do have a concern that are these bookings actually going to take place as the rise of the Delta variant moves across the world? The good news for Canada is that our vaccination rates are climbing and travel restrictions have started to ease. Overall, 68% of Canadians are now fully vaccinated, and 12 and over were up to 78% and still climbing. To Zane's point, this means that many Canadians should have and can travel, in that they are very low risk when it comes to visiting parts of Canada or visiting parts of the world. Starting in early August, the Canadian government started welcoming fully vaccinated Americans into Canada. And as of yesterday, fully vaccinated international travelers are welcome in Canada without having a 14-day isolation or quarantine. However, we still have a blanket travel policy in place for Canadian travelers, which is avoid all non-essential travel outside of the country, even though so many Canadians are fully vaccinated. This needs to change. We are very hopeful for the future, but until international travel restrictions resume, our industry cannot recover. Our workers cannot return to work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. And next we have our friends from across the pond, Graham Buck. Hi, Graham. Take it away.
Hello. Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm Director of Communications at ABTA, which is the Association of British Travel Agents. And despite the name, we represent not just the majority of UK travel agents, but also tour operators as well. And that's around 4,000 brands. Now, here in the UK, government travel policy hasn't really helped deliver a meaningful recovery for the travel market, and that's a market worth roughly £37 billion sterling in normal times. We've always said we should open up safely, but we've been opening up far less quickly than most of Europe, despite it being widely acknowledged that our vaccine programme has been ahead of many others. In terms of our system at the moment, we have something which is known as a traffic light system, where you have countries for international travel categorized into green, where there are still restrictions, but there are the fewest restrictions, amber, where there's more restrictions, and then red, where there's the most. And the most popular destinations for UK travelers during the summer, France, Spain, Italy, and Greece and Europe, and we get a lot of people going to the UK, none of those have been on the green list. And that green list has accounted for no more than about 10% of usual UK travel, and often even less. We've also had, in the past year, around 50 changes to travel regulations by the government. That's a lot, that's getting on for one a week. And that uncertainty clearly will knock consumer confidence and give a lack of stability, which is damaging. And like Zane said earlier on, that sort of level of change is really unwieldy, and it's also untenable. Testing requirements in the UK are also a further disincentive for people to travel. So we believe the UK is the only major European country which requires everybody to have COVID tests post-arrival for all travellers, no matter what their vaccination status or where they've travelled from. So what's the impact been on our members and on our sector? Well, similar to Canada in terms of travel agents and tour operators having an 85–90% reduction in revenue and in output, we are the most affected business sector along with aviation out of all business sectors in the UK. And earlier this year, ABTA released some estimates that nearly 200,000 jobs in the UK have either gone or will be at risk if the situation continues. The travel sector here wants to trade through this and is perfectly able to, but it does need some short to medium term support to do that, but we haven't had anything really from government by way of a sector specific financial support programme to recognise the unique circumstances of travel in the UK. So we've got government policy making an already difficult situation for the UK travel industry worse, and what we need is for travel to open up more, to recognise the reality of what's happening with vaccinations, and to have some more flexibility from policymakers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Graham. Really appreciate it. Next up, we have our partners representing all of Europe. Hello, Eric. Eric Dressan, take it away. Give us your update.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for this invitation and to give us the opportunity to explain the situation in Europe. So ABTA is the European Association of the Travel Agents and Tour Operators, bringing together 30 national associations from EU and non-EU countries. As you can imagine, our association aim is to advocate the interests of the travel agents towards the EU institutions, and there are many, and also to help members to work together, share information, and then help the companies to flourish. Very basic information to start with. The impact of COVID-19 on our industry, like Wendy and Graham explained, up to 95% of loss of turnover in the majority of the countries. Even sometimes 100% when tour operators were focusing in segment like long haul, MICE, or group travel. We estimated that the loss for the whole European travel agents and tour operator industry for 2020 was about 130 billion euros. So it's a huge amount. The main issues we have had in the past year, the last 18 months, it's the refund to customers, because we had to stop activities all of a sudden, and we have a specific regulation in Europe where we need to take care of our customer with a particular stringent regulation. So we had to refund, but very few of the service suppliers could do that to the tour operators in particular. So we have had a shortage of cash flow in the whole chain, and this has been very, very problematic at company level, but also globally. So our industry developed in different countries, not all European countries, but in many countries, a system of vouchers to give the opportunity to companies to postpone the travel or the leisure of their clients. But we still have a problem now because they have maturity. They have to be used within 12 or 18 months. Yet tourism is not completely restarting, and we have an issue now how to reimburse our customer. Very important, and you have certainly heard that we have a patchwork of uncoordinated and ever-changing regulations as regard travel restrictions between the member states. Graham just explained that in the previous presentation. And the member states, despite working together at European level, despite providing a single voice for the industry, when they come back in their own capital, the reaction is completely different. So this has made business completely impossible if there was the technical possibility to organize travel, because there's uncertainty of legislation, quarantine, vaccination, tests, and so on, made it purely impossible for travel organizers to operate. However, we see a demand, and that will be the two last comments, that we see a demand for travel and tourism. Leisure tourism is doing quite well in Europe in a way, but it's very domestic. So either it is in the country or it's intra-European travel. People take their car instead of flying by plane and go to the neighboring countries. So there is a shift into the demand, but there is a demand for tourism and for travel. Another point is that there is a lot of last-minute bookings. So because there's this ever-changing pattern of national legislation, it's very difficult for people to plan their holidays. And last thing that will be a hot issue for us in the coming month, when travel restarts, there has been a massive reduction in staff in companies for good or bad reason, but that's the way it is. And there is a need for trained and experienced workforce in the coming month. And that's an issue we are currently preparing activities for the coming month. And I will stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. That was really helpful information. And last but certainly not least is Vanessa, representing our partners in the Caribbean. Vanessa, take it away.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, and we appreciate ABTA's invitation to join you today. We stand a little bit different from the rest of the previous speakers in that the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association is the advocate and representative of the private hospitality sector, representing our 33 member destinations across the region. So our previous speakers all represent associations that support individuals that drive travel to the industry. Tourism is a critical economic driver in the Caribbean, and after nearly 10 years of unprecedented growth in the region, COVID's disruption hit the economic core with impacts higher than the global average. To give you some perspective, 9 of the 10 top countries most dependent on tourism for employment are in the Caribbean. In 2020, we lost 1 in 4 tourism jobs, nearly 700,000. And in terms of GDP contribution, the industry had a 58% decrease, with small and medium enterprises particularly affected, while the global average drop was 49.1%. We've been conducting a number of business impact surveys since last year, and our most recent one was in the summer in collaboration with the Organization of American States as an assessment of challenges to post-disaster business continuity of small tourism enterprises. And the results were that small and medium-sized tourism businesses in the Caribbean are poised to recover. 99% report implementing strong health safety protocols. Over 8,000 Caribbean supervisors, managers, and owners, mostly from SMTs, have participated in health safety training that we've deployed since last year. And 72% of small and medium-sized tourism companies are expected to fully recover from the pandemic. All of this is in the context that the Caribbean's incidence of infections, hospitalizations, or deaths are among the lowest in the world, which is reflective of early and sustained proactive measures, but also a testament of a unique and strong partnership established back in 2015 with the Caribbean Public Health Agency, or CARPHA, with the objective of collaboration on health safety, prevention monitoring, and mitigation efforts. In our efforts to build travelers' assurance, we have collaboratively developed a number of resources like CARPHA's Caribbean Traveler Health Assurance Stamp, which is endorsed by the World Travel and Tourism Council and awarded to tourism businesses that commit to training, certification, and monitoring. with a companion tool, the Caribbean Travelers Health app, which provides vital information from the 26 CARFA member states, including listing of properties, recognizing those that have achieved the stamp recognition, as well as health alerts from these 26 states. We continue to lobby to governments pleading for harmonization of entry requirements to ease the traveler preparation experience. We know that travel advisors remain very challenged in understanding what the protocols and requirements are, as in most instances, these change daily. In supporting and assisting our travel partners, we have developed a grid that summarizes the entry requirements for all our 33 member destinations, including links to the appropriate destination website with all the required information. Data points towards high demand. Particularly, we've been successful from a US market perspective because of ease of accessibility, but as well because of ease somehow in the regulations, particularly to re-enter the United States. The accessibility of the region, brand identity, and management of the pandemics have been key aspects in driving that demand. The region is no stranger to crisis. It's been extremely resilient, and we remain cautiously optimistic that the Caribbean is well positioned to recover through tourism, driven particularly by the acceleration and encouragement of vaccinations, the continued adherence to health safety protocols, opening up closed markets with safety assurance, but more importantly, the adaptability, flexibility, and collaboration from all stakeholders with the objective of facilitating and stimulating travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we just heard a lot of information from all of our panelists. And what I want to do now, because I'm seeing questions come in, and I have a few of our colleagues behind the scenes helping funnel questions through, and we have a lot of them. So I want to just bring everyone up right now. Michelle, if you can help me get everybody up so that we can start with our Q&As. And the first question that I have, and this is for the whole panel, and we'll start with you, Zane, and then we'll go through from Wendy in the same order to Graham, Eric, and then Vanessa. But the first question that we have right now for everybody is, how can our governments better support the travel industry financially? Zane?
Well, I think that the answer is twofold. The first is that it needs to provide direct grant-like relief to industries and businesses like ours that are affected directly by its pronouncements. I mean, our government has charged those at the CDC with public health, and if they're telling people, don't travel or discouraging travel or even shutting down travel like they did in the case with the cruise industry, then that decision should trigger immediate grant relief to our members. That's the first thing they can do. And the second thing they can do is really to, back to the point of this panel. I mean, they have to follow their own science. What they've told us for months and months is that vaccination makes life better. It will allow you to return to activities that you love to do, especially travel. So if that's the case, then there should be at least a two-tier system of threat analysis. Graham mentioned they have the stoplight system in the UK. And the European Union last week discouraged its member countries from accepting visitors from the United States. Painting these sort of broad brush green light or don't accept travelers from the United States, like that's too blunt of an instrument. The sort of diagnostic equipment that governments have now has to change. It has to get more sophisticated, and it has to be at least two-tier. Right now, it has to say, okay, if you're vaccinated, here are the rules for travel, and if you're unvaccinated, here are the rules for travel. Because that's what that's the reason why people went and got vaccinated. So those are two things: direct grant reliefs, and then recognize, and then put a system in place that recognizes vaccination and allows those who are vaccinated to travel more freely.
Who wants to go next? Eric?
I'm happy to continue on that. I fully agree with saying comments. We enter a new period now from this pandemic. I don't know if we're getting out of it, but for sure that we cannot use the tool we were using up to now, and we need certainly to help the industry getting the conditions to bring people back into travel. And when we mentioned getting people back into travel, in our perspective, in Europe, I mean, I suppose in the US, when we were discussing with our colleagues from ASTA, that's the message we heard. Domestic tourism, domestic travel was not that bad. But what we absolutely need to do is to restart international travel. And we need to put all the elements that are in our hands to do that. And I don't want to take too much time, but clearly using the vaccine as one of the key elements there is crucial. I would say, as a joke, it's maybe more dangerous, problematic for me to travel to Antwerp than to travel to New York. Because the place, the level of contamination may be, more problematic in the surrounding of your home place. So, in the same line as them, just use the tool we have now.
Yeah. What about you, Wendy?
Well, I think your question around what financial support should the government be giving travel agents across Canada, that one of the things that we're seeing is that there's a lot of what I call have industries or sectors that actually have a bit of a labor shortage. And when it comes to travel agencies, that we are, for the most part, shuttered until these international borders open up and these blanket travel restrictions, avoid all non-essential travel across the country, are eased. So between now and when that happens, we are in critical need of continued financial aid. In Canada, most of these financial support programs are ending in October. We're in the midst of a federal election, but clearly it does not make sense to reduce any aid programs for hardest hit sectors like travel agencies. So like Zane mentioned, we are looking for grants. Our industry is so in debt, we cannot take on more debt. And so we are looking for grants. We're looking for continuations of programs like the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy. We need the EI programs for travel agency employees to continue till we get to the other side of COVID. And then, of course, we have a considerable amount of travel agents in Canada that are independent contractors. Their aid is also being pulled in October, which is unacceptable. We need to survive so that we can recover. So the whole issue around financial support is actually priority number one. We do not want continued aid. We need it. And until we actually can move to recovery, it is vital for the survival of this industry, for these aid programs, not only to continue but be enhanced over at least the next 6 months.
I see everyone shaking their heads in agreement, which is good. I'm glad that we're all collectively bringing our thoughts together. Graham, what about you? What does the UK need?
Well, I guess I'm at the risk of repeating what some other people have said. I think one of the key things is certainly in the UK, the domestic economy has been opening up ahead of international travel by quite some way, and yet business sectors are being treated the same in terms of the support they've been given. So if you're a hairdresser, for example, for some time now, you've been able to open, you can go in and get your hair cut, and there's not particularly any restrictions. And yet they've been able to access similar levels of support to the travel sector, where there are still a lot of restrictions there and the industry is struggling. So we need recognition that different sectors are experiencing different realities and therefore need to receive different levels of support. The kind of support we need is similar to, as we were saying, for Canada. So it's specific grant support for the travel sector, and there's continuation of other schemes that are otherwise due to be wound up. We've had some resistance, it's fair to say, from the UK government on this, and some inflexibility, but we're not going to stop fighting for it, and we're going to continue to make the case. And then lastly, quickly, the other way to help the sector financially is by looking at the rules and regulations on travel, making sure they're fit for purpose and allowing more destinations to open up so more people travel, and therefore the industry can support itself through the crisis by being able to trade more.
Mm-hmm. Vanessa.
Yeah, we've been encouraged by some initial policy initiatives that are taking place in the Caribbean, driven by the prime ministers from Antigua, Barbuda, Barbados, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines that can potentially reduce the cost of travel. Certainly, initiatives like that would be well received. Also, support to the business community. I mean, in our perspective, in order for travelers to continue to experience the same warmth and product and the people that represent our industry, businesses need to be able to survive. And also from a marketing and PR perspective, being able to continually tell our story and share our successes, and as well make even better and easier the process of selling travel to the travelers is vital.
And I just want to let everyone know here on the panel that there are a lot of questions coming through, which is good. So if you're watching live, almost 300 of you watching live, we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to keep going to these questions because there's so much to discuss. And I want to make sure that we're using everyone's time here because this is a great discussion. And that leads us to our next point, which is about what can we do to contribute to the restart of travel. We've talked about harmonizing testing and vaccination requirements. And I would like to start with you, Zane. Talk to us about what we can do to contribute to the restart of travel, and specifically how vaccination harmonization and testing requirements can help in that. And then we'll go around the panel and everyone can provide some feedback as well on the topic. Oh no, Zane, hold on. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Oh, I'm glad. I was just saying I want to go last because all my colleagues on this panel have really insightful comments. What can we do? We have to lean on our governments. Something that Graham said really struck me. It's that we struggle as well. We're kind of a less visible part of the travel industry. Those in the travel advisor community than other sectors like hotels and airlines. The government sort of intuitively understands that they have customers that show up in person. And because of that, the policies that they undertake affect those businesses. We need to be just as visible and vocal and present as those large, sort of maybe who have more mind share sectors of the travel economy. So in that way, we have to contact our legislators. We have to bring that force to bear. And the good news is that we have the numbers to do it. We're running a campaign right now. We have 1,900 of our members contacting the 22 members of Congress who are responsible for writing the ERTC credit rules. That's really important. If that 1,900 were 19,000 and they were constantly, bombarding our legislators with messages about how important the ERTC is to their business, that would do wonders. So we have the small business members. They just have to honestly take time from their day to call their legislator, to write their legislator, and let them know the things that are important to them. And ASTA's advocacy portal makes it really clear and makes that process very easy. I guess the other thing that we can do is we have to cozy up to the customer. We have to make sure that we are not diagnosing the risk tolerance the risk threat that they're exposed to when they travel. We have to point them to the CDC and the State Department websites and continue to help them understand the risks that are associated with travel while not trying to sell to their own risk tolerance. I mean, everyone has a different one, and I think it's important to keep the customers that you have in mind. Most people have been pent up for 18 months now, and they're desperate to get out and see the world. So I think it's those two things are a good place to start.
And Eric, just to follow up on that, when it comes to what we can do to contribute to the restart of travel, and another media question that kind of falls into this kind of conversation that we're having right now about rapid testing and vaccinations, what could we do to make that more efficient? And one specific question in the media is, in your opinion, why are governments not utilizing rapid testing to ensure safe travel? And what is that something that we need collectively to do it as an industry to get travel to restart?
Yeah. First, I apologize because the building, I don't know if you hear the sound, but the building sector is back back to work, so my apologies, but we would like very much our members to do the same, to be back to the office. One element that I would agree with saying is joining efforts. Today we are talking together, and we believe, all of us, I think that we could prolong this debate with something more, and an action that would voice in a stronger way the voice or the interest of the companies. This being said, I have to be very honest on the rapid testing. Why the member states have so much reluctance to that? I wouldn't say. I consider, or they consider, this is not reliable enough. And so we are not in a position to contradict this. This is scientific approach. We might agree or not agree, but we do not enter this kind of debate. What we believe is that indeed we need to, and again, to repeat what we said earlier, we need to give an incentive for people to people who are getting vaccinated. We have this passport in Europe, which has been set up. You need to consider that 27 countries deciding in 3 months' time to do this kind of tool, to implement it and to use it. It's a huge effort. So, I mean, if we're able to do that, all of a sudden, we can certainly be more ambitious in terms of restarts of travel and being a bit more proactive as the government can be a bit more proactive. Vaccination is the easiest and the most reliable tool we have there, and we need to further develop that. I don't know how far the American model for vaccination passport or health certificates, our digital health certificate, as we call it here in Europe, is implemented. But here it's quite easy. Either you're vaccinated, or you're tested, or you have recovered from contamination, and this is covering many situations of the people.
And Wendy, what are your thoughts on harmonizing these standards for testing and vaccination requirements as it pertains to Canada? And then Graham and Vanessa, please feel free to weigh in as well after.
So it definitely is a significant issue in Canada and globally, that one of our asks of our government, and this ask happens every single day, is to really follow the science, follow the data when it comes to vaccine recognition, and to work with their counterparts around the world to ensure that there is consistency. We are advised that this is happening, and as an industry, we need to keep pushing so this remains or even becomes a bigger issue for governments to want to solve. And so, for instance, in Canada, that a way to vaccinate Canadians very quickly was that our government made the decision to offer mixed vaccines. So many Canadians might have AZ, so AstraZeneca, as their first dose, and then their second dose is, let's say, Pfizer or Moderna. And so what's happening, that's been very effective. They keep stating that the science is there, but Canadians are not necessarily welcome around the world with mixed vaccines. So I think that as a world, that we need to really get, quite frankly, our act together and follow the science, understand the science through one group that might be the World Health Organization, so that we can actually stop this. On Monday, here's what the rules are. Tuesdays, here's what the rules are. Wednesday, it's a separate set of rules. And that is, multiplied all over the world. So I think that having some standard protocol based on science and data that's reasonable is really a key step forward. And watching some of the announcements in Canada and throughout the world, sometimes, quite honestly, often, you have to sit back and wonder, why in the world is that decision being made? And so I think that really the governments working together, being reasonable and not following public opinion, but following science and data, that we actually need to take that up to another level. As far as the travel industry goes, we are asking every single travel advisor, every single travel owner in Canada as voters, we're in the middle of an election here, to make sure that they understand that these are critical issues that need to be solved for Canadians to become mobile, and for us to survive as an industry.
Well put, and that's why we're all here as an industry. Vanessa.
I want to go back to the question about the use of rapid testing, and we have this continuous discussions with our partners, our CARFA, and it's all data driven. The science still indicates that PCR testing remains the gold standard. However, as more tests are developed and there are more vaccinated travelers, it's a matter of data and analyzing the risk assessment and determining based on the data what changes need to take place. In terms of harmonization, that it's critical. And as well, also, when we look at data, it also should apply as well when destinations are assigned a threat level. We've been seeing in the past few days some of the most popular Caribbean destinations going to a higher threat level in the CDC listings because of small spikes and in some instances over one case. So having a look at the in-depth look at what's really going on in the destination, and particularly the successes that we've had in the strict adherence and deployment of the protocols is vital.
And Graham, what are your thoughts?
Just a couple of quick things. And going back, if you like, to the original question of how to get things moving again. In terms of keeping the pressure up, Zane said a lot about lobbying legislators and government and policymakers. I think you need to back this, and I would say this as I'm a director of communications, with a strong media presence as well. So it's making sure that your efforts are then amplified in the wider media so that people understand the reality of what's happening, the facts, and we help to give understanding, help to try and build consumer confidence in that way. And the second bit also relates to consumer confidence. So the conversations we've had around clarity and things being different from country to country, the more consistency you can have across borders, and it won't always be easy, I accept that, but the more consistency you have, the more consumer confidence you're likely to get, rather than people thinking, well, I know what the situation here is in the UK, but what's the situation in this country, and what happens if I go to that country? That the easier it is to understand, the less off-putting it will be for people to travel, and the sooner we'll get things going again.
Erica, if I may, when we, in speaking with our members, that was one of the most thought out incentives, marketing and public relations, because it is very important that across the world, all of our markets know what's going on in our particular destinations. Also, we have to realize that sessions such as this that highlight the value, the economic value of tourism are important. And it's not only that direct contribution, there's also indirect and induced, and in regions like the Caribbean where tourism is critical and drives the economy, that highlighting the value of facilitating travel from our most important markets is important.
I saw Eric might want to jump in. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? No? Well, I am getting more questions that are coming in, and this one's actually from a partner that we work with at CNBC, which leads us to our next topic about using a travel professional and why that's so important. And her question is, she wants to understand what demand was like for travel advisors over the summer, given the conflicting headlines and changing policies. Were more travelers resorting to experts to book travel? And if you have any data on this, please feel free to share. I know from ASTA's side, yes, we saw an increase from our data, and that 40% of travelers who had never used a travel professional before were using a travel professional because the system was too complex for them to navigate on their own. So for each of you, I'm going to start with Eric, perhaps. Let's start with Eric, and then we'll do Graham, Vanessa, and Wendy. So the question again is, what was demand like over the summer for travel advisors? And did the conflicting headlines and changing policies have an impact on travelers coming back to the travel advisor?
Well, I should be very honest on that topic. It's very difficult to say, very honestly. There is certainly a demand for expertise, and travel advisors are the right person to reply to the questions. I have even to say that most of, it is so complex in Europe that even for professionals, it was difficult to be informed, timely informed of all the changes into legislation. It is a challenging, it was, and it is a challenging task for the consumers to find out their ways into this ocean of information. Now, is there a trend, that's a revert trend that people want absolutely to access to or to go to travel advisor? No, it's true that last minute bookings were also made directly by the customers. So there is a demand, and the expertise was recognized, but we don't see, sadly enough, we don't expect a big change in the coming months on that. You are mute, Erica.
My goodness, it wouldn't be a live stream if that didn't happen. So, Graham, I'm going to unmute you. Talk to us about demand for travel professionals and what it was like over the summer.
I'll answer in two parts. I mean, for over the summer, I think, like Eric, it's a little bit hard to say because you've got overall demand for travel being much lower than it would be in a normal year. And therefore, how do you then separate that from demand for travel agents? Because much fewer people are traveling, and therefore fewer people are using travel agents from that point of view. So I think the way to look at this in terms of what are people's feelings overall is looking to the future. And we conducted some research looking at how likely people are in the UK to use a travel professional in the future compared with before the pandemic. And it's about 25% more likely. And the reasons that people give are because they feel it gives them more security. They feel they can benefit from the expertise that a professional advisor will have. So there's an element in there of protection, of whether that's of the money they've paid or whether it's of the type of holiday they've had. Perhaps some people feel a bit stung after what's been happening. So the overall message seems to be people are considerably more likely to be wanting to work with a travel advisor when they're traveling again. The question for this summer, just finishing really, is that there's been a lot less travel, and therefore how much have travel agents been used? And that's why we're going back to the earlier point, that's why we need the financial support, because travel agents haven't been able to get in the business that they need. But the future could look good when we come out of this because of that growing demand for the type of service they offer.
And Wendy, demand for travel advisors over the summer, I know it's been tricky because of the headlines constantly changing. Has that impacted demand for travel advisors in Canada?
So what I can say in Canada, that the vast majority of travel that happened in the summer, you'll have to remember that we had a mandatory hotel quarantine up until early August. That and actually all of the research prior to the summer showed this, that Canadians were going to travel within Canada and they were going to visit friends and family that they haven't seen for over a year and a half. And so that ended up to be true. What we also know is there is a tremendous pent-up demand for travel. So all these people that have been shuttered at home, they've been dreaming about wonderful vacations. And so we actually have seen an uptick definitely on future travel. We also know that more than 30% of Canadians are more likely to use the valuable resources of a travel agent. And again, Canada, our travelers are quite safety oriented. So what the research shows is that your typical Canadian wants to, so we're talking about really winter travel 2022 and into the summer 2022. They want to know exactly what the safety protocols are at the airport, on the airplane. What are the protocols at my destination? What are the COVID numbers at my destinations? What are the hospitalizations at my destination? And then they even want to know about right down to the resort or the hotel or the cruise. And so I think that using a professional travel agent is now seemed more valuable than ever. And so, so we're definitely seeing that. And we're also seeing that the number of questions and the number of contacts has actually gone up quite dramatically. And so maybe you would speak to your client 2 or 3 times before they actually traveled. I think that we're hearing closer from our travel agents that they're talking to their clients, 10, 15 times, and they're not traveling until February. And so definitely the interest in what's going on with COVID, the safety, that has increased dramatically. And therefore, a professional travel agent is being seen as one of the most strongest supports in that.
And I'm throwing up our email because I know that I'm seeing the questions come in, and I'm going to move through them. If it's okay with everybody, I have some specific questions for each of you, but for those questions that we don't get to, email pr@asta.org. We'll make sure it gets to the right panelist or response from our team. Vanessa, travel professionals, how have they helped in the Caribbean? With all the changing headlines, we have a lot of questions right now, in fact, from our travel advisors about what's going on in the Caribbean. So how have travel advisors helped the Caribbean, and what can we do to support as an industry? We've talked a lot about these changing rules and requirements, and in your view, over the summer, how has the travel advisor helped the traveler navigate that?
According to one of our strategic partners, Travels to Trust is one of the most sought out critical components of the travel experience, particularly as Wendy had pointed, health and safety, it's pretty much driving the desire of the traveler. So having an experienced and knowledgeable individual about what's going on, have any specific data that can point towards the use of a travel advisor. From a CHTA perspective, we develop the grid that's on our COVID resource page with the basics of the requirements, because even for us, it was challenging to keep abreast of the constant changes. We've heard from our members slightly that they've seen an increase in direct bookings, and we started this partnership with ASTA, seeing as well that it would be beneficial for our members to have a stronger connect with the travel advisor community. So trust, expertise, and knowledge, it's vital, and that's a pivotal role of the travel advisor.
And Zane, make sure you unmute yourself, but give us your view. I know it, but the role of the travel advisor, and how has the travel advisor helped navigate through all of the headlines over the summer? What is your view on that?
Yeah, we poll our members and poll consumers on a fairly consistent basis, and the reality is that headlines, to Graham's earlier point, headlines do matter, and when confusing information either from governments or new pronouncements from the CDC, when they seem to contradict previous pronouncements, or there's sometimes a negative reaction, and then sometimes there's just a shrug, like we saw last fall. I mean, the reality is, last Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays here in the United States, the CDC came out the week before and warned people not to travel. And people sort of shrugged and said, hey, you know what? You told us before that traveling with masks was fine. So a record number of people traveled during those 2 holidays, and the corresponding spike in COVID cases never came. So I think that there's an important, what has it done for the travel advisor? This complex way, anytime there's complexity, it favors expertise. And so it's the current conditions have really highlighted the need for a travel advisor in a way that maybe other things haven't or previously. So in that way, it is a blessing, and a bit of a blessing in disguise. But the reality is the continued lockdowns, the continued quarantines. I see one of the questions here is the Netherlands is treating people, vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers, the same, and asking both to quarantine. That doesn't seem to follow the science to me, that decision. How can that follow the science if you're treating people who've been vaccinated and unvaccinated the exact same and asking them to quarantine in a hotel? Like those kind of mixed messages, out in the media, they definitely have a depressing effect on demand, even though, the expertise of our members has never been more needed and more sought after. So what happened over the summer? Well, initial bookings went crazy, and then a lot of cancellations and postponements happened based on that media attention. That's why it's really important for us to not only petition our own governance, not only link arms here and ask governments to treat vaccinated travelers differently than unvaccinated, but also to Graham's point earlier, which is to really go to the media and try to help them pressure our public our public officials. No one wants to be first, but I think that going back to something that Wendy said, we should immediately reciprocate. Now that Canada is accepting vaccinated Americans, we should immediately reciprocate and accept vaccinated Canadians to the U.S. I mean, we have to. Someone's got to show some political courage here and step forward, and I think we can help give them that courage by putting pressure where we can.
And Eric, do you want to weigh in, Eric and Graham, maybe on the question from James Schillinglaw from Insider Travel Report, and he asked about the reaction to the Netherlands move to quarantine both vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers. And this goes beyond the EU's recent recommendation. Any comments on that?
I think that for non-European people, this is a complex context. But in fact, the EU didn't say that we have to ban, or that the EU's travelers are banned in Europe. They just say they recommended the member states, who are the only relevant authorities to decide travel restrictions, to ban, to make a complete and blank ban for US travelers, up to the member states to decide to do that. I just checked before this webinar just to be sure. Today we have Sweden, which decided as soon as of Monday to ban US travelers, to have a legal one. I mean, it's clear. The Dutch initiative is rather a de facto ban, because you are allowed to come, but who want to go to Amsterdam and stay the whole holidays in quarantine? And so far, as we know today, it's the 2 only countries that decided to do that. So the problem is, and then what Graham and Zane said, headlines you read in the US is it's not possible to travel to Europe. How you can explain that Croatia is safe or Italy is safe, or you could go there, because we don't know what will be the decision of the Italian or the Croatian government in 10 days time. So it's really, really difficult, and it's where we need to have this coordination, at least in Europe, in order to clarify. And certainly, again and again, let's focus on these health certificates in order to allow people to travel, because they are safe.
Mm-hmm. Graham, thoughts on anything that Eric said?
Yeah, I think as a UK association, I think it's difficult to comment on the decision of the Dutch government. It's certainly a new one for me, being a PR to do so. I think, though, in principle, it does seem strange that if you have vaccinated travellers and unvaccinated travellers, or people who've only had 1 dose, not 2, etc., it seems strange to treat them all the same. Because, as many people on this panel have said, there are scientific benefits from double vaccination, which have been proven time and time again, and they've got to be taken into account in terms of opening up both travel and wider society.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question actually for you, Wendy. And so in Canada, many Canadians, they've, based on Health Canada's recommendation, have mixed vaccine doses. Is this turning out to be a significant issue for Canadian travelers? Is there any progress on this issue of the recommendation for mixing vaccine doses?
So definitely this has turned out to be a significant issue for Canadian travelers. In fact, there was a case where in a Broadway show in New York City, if you had the AstraZeneca vaccine, you couldn't attend the Bruce Springsteen Broadway show. So certainly that was overturned, but it just goes to show you sort of how odd some of these decisions are. And so the travel and tourism industry, every single meeting that we have with the government, whether it's about the airport, whether it's about the border, whether it's about a new protocol, operations, that we are talking about the issue of mixed vaccines and the inability of many Canadians to travel into 2022. They have assured us that this is a priority for them. I think that the Delta variant has certainly become front and center for most governments, but it is a significant issue that we need to work through as Canadians. The one option is the booster shots that come out, but really at the highest level of governments, particularly to the key destinations that Canadians travel to, that we really are asking for a speedy response to this, in that we have a lot of Canadians who have booked travel for 2022, and at this point in time, that they will not be able to enter those countries.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And specifically, I have a question on the Caribbean, kind of in the same vein. So I'm going to bring Vanessa up. And the question is, sorry, I'm reading it right now. The question is about our partnership with the Caribbean and what can we do? Sorry, I have to go back to the question. What can we do to learn more about the Caribbean countries that are talking about introducing a vaccine certificate that would be recognized in other parts of the world, like the US, UK, and Europe? So want to know a little bit more about if the countries in the Caribbean are talking about that concept of introducing a vaccine certificate that would be recognized in other parts of the world.
Most of our work has been, first of all, in harmonization of the entry protocols, because that is vital. And in terms of acceptance of a health credential pass, it's more in terms of acceptance from our major markets. It's very important having the processes to validify those credentials. We have been in constant communication with the World Travel and Tourism Council. They are as well evaluating how to proceed, but we've been evaluating it more from the perspective of what sort of credentials as a region we will be accepting, preferably in a harmonized approach, more than a vaccine passport for Caribbean citizens across the world.
And that leads us to our last question. So we're coming up on the hour, and I just want to assure everyone in the media that's been emailing questions, we will follow up. We're going to make sure that all the questions specifically for our panelists get to the right panelists. So, and for all of the members who have left wonderful questions, thank you so much. So the last question, and Michelle, if you can help me bring everybody up for this last question, and thank you from Brown and Hill Media for asking this question. And the question is this: let's face it, COVID isn't going away. We are going to have to consider this for years. Are governments thinking that we can maintain the status quo until it dies out? That could be 10 years. Is it going to take years for the world population to get vaccinated? Is it going to take years to get back to traveling again? So, Zane, we'll start with you, and then we'll just go down the line.
Well, I don't have it's a great question. I don't have a crystal ball, but I certainly say, I would certainly say I hope not. I hope that we can apply the proper political pressure along with media pressure and help our governments to see that restarting travel is really in their interest. I mean, the rewards are there. I can't remember who said it earlier, but there are, again, 175 million vaccinated Americans. They've squirreled away trillions of dollars, and they're looking to go somewhere that they can go safely, that they can come back from, and that they know that they're not going to get stuck there. Excuse me. So my sense is that but what the pandemic has shown me, though, is that once regulations are on the books, they can be very hard to take off. That's why it's really important for us to fight now and continue to fight. Because if we don't, it's government gets distracted with all the other myriad priorities that they have. So unless we join forces, unless we use our collective voice to have a very clear message that vaccinations matter, there needs to be a dual track, sort of a risk evaluative system in place for those who are vaccinated and those who are not, and that we can start to reopen the world to the people who have chosen to act responsibly and be vaccinated. That's the path forward. So I certainly hope that we can make headway on this very, very important priority for ASTA, and I know for all my colleagues around the world.
And just to follow up on that, Zane, because you touched on a little bit of this, and one of the questions that followed this first question that I asked is, can the governments give better heads up to tourism associations, tourism boards, operators, and travel advisors before these sorts of announcements, or why aren't they? And that's why we're here, is to talk about that. And anyway, so Wendy, what is your take? Is this something that can governments maintain the status quo until COVID dies out? And that could be 10 years from now. I agree. So what is it going to take for travel to restart? Oh, I'll unmute. Yeah. There we go. Oh, you're muted. You're self-muted. There you go.
All right. Okay. I think, as the reporter suggested, that COVID is going to be with us for many, many years to come. And that it seems that some governments are trying to take a zero risk perspective, and then others are doing more of we need to manage the risk, and that we recognize that that people are going to get COVID. We're doing everything that we can through vaccination policies and some other policies to make it the best that it can be. I think that all of us on this call are very fortunate in that we actually have had access to one of the best defenses, which is vaccines. And I think that it's important for governments to really recognize that, and that now we need to start traveling. Travel is an integral part of a quality life for millions and millions of North Americans, Europeans, people around the world. And we are at a place now where we've been very fortunate to actually receive these vaccines. And I think that it's important for governments to actually manage risk versus having us be shuttered for the next 5 years, so that we are at a zero chance of catching this virus.
Eric, make sure you unmute yourself, but closing thoughts.
I don't want to repeat what has been said. I think I will take a more positive approach as regard the questions. Just imagine 18 months ago, we closed the world completely. There was nothing happening in the world. We were locked at home in most of the country. Today, 18 months after, we have solutions, and we need to find a way. We are trying all together to find a way out. So I'm sure it's going to move ahead, and we are going to work in that direction all together. And it's maybe, finger crossed, it's maybe quicker than we can expect. I hope that. So I'll take a positive, but agree with all Graham and Zane and Wendy said before. Just to make a final comment, and that was the challenge we have to face as associations, all of us, I imagine, because the decisions of the governments is not, our interlocutor were not anymore the tourism minister or the economy minister, but there was the health minister. And those people had no clue, and I can understand that, it's not a blame, had no clue about the economy, had no vision of the impact it was causing to the business. Tourism is 10% of the GDP in Europe. Okay, we had to do the lockdowns, I don't know, but it's a fact. But we can't continue with that. And the people, the drivers now are, let's say, the usual ministers, the usual authorities, and it's easier to discuss and to find solution with them. So this was a major shift and very, very difficult for associations to argue and discuss with those new persons who tried their best to find solutions, to be honest too.
Vanessa, make sure you're unmuted.
Yes,
Great.
not a problem. It's all about three principles. Adaptability. This thing is going to be with us forever and ever, but we've developed a number of processes that have shown the great results. Flexibility and collaboration. We really want to thank ASTA for the opportunity of bringing us together. It does make for a stronger voice if we can sing the same tune and collaborate together as one and continue to highlight the value of the industry, not only direct, but the indirect and the induced impact of travel in our respective destinations and regions.
Graham, you're going to close it out for us.
Yeah. One thing I don't think we have addressed was the question about, can governments give a better heads up, tourism associations, etc., on changes that are made? Simple, quick answer to that, yes. And then moving on, I'm with Eric in terms of, longer term, I think things could be very positive. In the UK, travel was illegal, international travel, at the beginning of the year. We're quite away from that now, although we're not quite where we want to be. And we shouldn't forget that people are social animals. They want to meet, they want to interact, not just for holidays, but also for business travel, and also just for going overseas to see friends, to see family, etc. So I think people are going to want to be traveling. I think people will learn to live with COVID in all aspects of society, and things will move on and things will change. But what we need right now is almost for things to be given a bit of a kickstart, so we can move on from this quite cautious approach we seem to be seeing everywhere to something that's still safe for everyone to travel, but recognizes the reality of the situation, of the scientific and medical state that we're in at any one time, and let's get things moving again.
I like ending on that note, and I want to thank everyone for joining this press briefing. I want to make sure we will answer all of the questions. I want to make sure all of our media partners know. I've seen emails come through. I've seen some texts come through. So I'm really glad to know that there's been this much engagement from all of our members and everyone here. So thank you so much for giving us your time. I know we went a little bit over the hour, but this was a really important discussion. And thank you so much. So again, please email pr@asta.org if you have any questions. That is it. We hope to bring our panel back again for another discussion. And if you have any topics that you think we should address as a group, put it on the comment thread. We'll go back in and answer questions and follow up throughout the week. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Erica.